The champagne flutes clinked around me, a symphony of celebration that felt like mockery. I stood in the corner of the country club's grand ballroom, watching my daughter Emma's engagement party unfold like a scene from a movie I couldn't afford a ticket to. The crystal chandeliers above cast prismatic light across faces I didn't recognize, people whose names ended in Roman numerals and whose summer homes had their own names. I was a single mother who had raised Emma in a two-bedroom apartment above a laundromat. For 26 years, I had worked double shifts as a nurse to give her everything I could. I wore my best dress tonight, a navy blue number I'd found at a consignment shop and had tailored to fit. It was modest, elegant even, but standing among these people in their designer gowns, I felt like a sparrow among peacocks. "Mrs. Patterson," a voice startled me from my thoughts. I turned to find my future son-in-law, Christopher Wellington III, approaching with two glasses of champagne. He was classically handsome in that old money way, sharp jawline, perfectly coiffed blonde hair, a smile that had been straightened by the finest orthodontist's money could buy. "Please call me Linda," I said, accepting the glass with a grateful smile. Of course, he took a sip of his champagne, his eyes scanning the room rather than meeting mine. "I wanted to thank you for coming tonight. I know this isn't exactly your usual scene." The comment landed like a stone in my chest, but I kept my smile fixed. I wouldn't miss my daughter's engagement party for anything in the world. "Naturally," he cleared his throat. "I also wanted to discuss the wedding arrangements. My parents have generously offered to cover all expenses. We'll be having it at the Rosewood Estate, 500 guests, full orchestra, the works. It's the Wellington tradition." "That's very generous of them," I said carefully. "Emma and I are happy to contribute what we can." Christopher's laugh was short and sharp. "Oh, that won't be necessary. We wouldn't want to burden you. I'm sure your budget is better spent elsewhere." He paused, and I saw something shift in his expression, a subtle tightening around his eyes. "In fact, my mother and I have been discussing the seating arrangements. We thought perhaps you'd be more comfortable at one of the back tables away from the main festivities. Some of our guests can be rather particular about pedigree." The word hit me like a slap, pedigree, as if we were dogs at a show. "Christopher, I'm Emma's mother. I'll be sitting wherever is appropriate for the mother of the bride." His smile never wavered, but his voice dropped lower. "Mrs. Patterson, Linda, let me be frank. You're a wonderful woman, I'm sure, and you've done your best with Emma, but you have to understand you come from, well, a different world than ours. The Wellingtons have a reputation to maintain. Standards. My parents' friends are business associates. These people notice things. The way someone dresses speaks, which fork they use for the salad course." My hand tightened around the champagne flute. "Are you saying I'm an embarrassment?" "I'm saying you're out of your depth." His voice was calm, matter-of-fact, as if he were explaining a simple truth. "This is high society, Linda, old money, blue blood, and you're working class. There's no shame in that, of course, but let's not pretend you belong in this world. For Emma's sake, for her future in this family, it might be best if you kept a low profile. Perhaps you could even consider not coming to certain events. We could say you were ill or had work obligations." The room seemed to tilt around me. This man who was going to marry my daughter was asking me to erase myself from her life because I wasn't good enough for his family's standards. "Does Emma know you feel this way?" I managed to ask. "Emma understands the importance of fitting in," he said smoothly. "She's been working very hard to polish away her rougher edges. She's going to be a Wellington after all. That means something." Before I could respond, Emma herself appeared, radiant in a cream-colored cocktail dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "There you are, Mom." "Christopher, have you been keeping my mother company?" "Just getting to know each other better," Christopher said, his public smile returning. "Your mother and I were discussing the wedding arrangements." Emma's eyes lit up. "Isn't it going to be amazing? Christopher's mother has the most incredible vision. Did he tell you about the ice sculptures and the flower arrangements? They're importing roses from Ecuador." I looked at my daughter, this beautiful woman I'd raised, and saw how she glowed when she looked at Christopher. I saw how she'd changed her hair, her clothes, even the way she spoke, softening her vowels, eliminating the casual phrases she'd grown up with. She was transforming herself to fit into his world, and she seemed happy about it. But I also saw something else. I saw the little girl who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms, the teenager who cried on my shoulder when she didn't make the volleyball team, the young woman who had hugged me fiercely on her college graduation day and whispered, "I couldn't have done it without you, Mom." That night I lay awake in my small apartment, Christopher's words echoing in my mind. "Low class, out of your depth, keep a low profile." I should have let it go. I should have swallowed my pride, attended the wedding, smiled for the photos, and retreated into whatever corner they assigned me. That would have been the safe choice, the path of least resistance. But I couldn't. Because 3 weeks after the engagement party, I discovered Christopher's secret. It happened by accident. I was at the hospital where I worked, chatting with a colleague during a break when she mentioned her brother-in-law who worked at a private investigation firm. "He's got stories that would curl your hair," she laughed. "All these rich people with their dirty secrets." Something made me ask if he'd ever investigated anyone named Wellington. Her face changed. "Actually, funny you should mention that. He had a case about 6 months ago. Christopher Wellington III. Some company wanted to vet him before a potential business deal." She leaned in closer. "Turns out Mr. High Society isn't quite what he appears to be." What she told me made my blood run cold. Christopher Wellington III was not born a Wellington. He was born Christopher Morris, son of a struggling mechanic in Ohio. When he was 19, he had been arrested for fraud, running a scheme that bilked elderly people out of their retirement savings. He had served 2 years in prison. After his release, he had changed his identity, created an elaborate false background, and infiltrated the Wellington family by befriending the real Christopher Wellington III at a European casino. When the real Christopher died in a yachting accident, Morris had stolen his identity completely, convincing the grieving Wellington parents that he was their son, returned after years abroad. The real Christopher Wellington III had been estranged from his parents for years. They had never even seen recent photos of him. Morris had studied the family history, learned their mannerisms, and slipped into the role so perfectly that no one questioned it. I verified every detail. I hired my colleague's brother-in-law myself, spent money I didn't have to confirm it all. The documentation was irrefutable. The man marrying my daughter was a con artist, a criminal, a fraud who had literally stolen another man's life. I went to Emma first, of course. I showed her everything. She looked at the documents, her face pale, and then she looked at me with tears in her eyes. "I don't believe you," she whispered. "You're making this up because you're jealous, because you can't stand that I'm marrying into a family like his, because you want to drag me back down to your level." His level, Christopher's poison, had worked deeper than I'd realized. "Emma, sweetheart, please. Get out," she said. "Get out and don't contact me again until you're ready to apologize." So I went to the police. They said they'd investigate, but these things took time. The wedding was in 2 weeks, there wasn't time. I made my decision on the morning of the wedding. The ceremony was everything Christopher had promised: opulent, excessive, a display of wealth that bordered on obscene. I sat in my assigned seat, not at the back as Christopher had suggested, but in the front row where the mother of the bride belonged. Emma had reluctantly included me there, though she'd barely spoken to me in the preceding weeks. Christopher stood at the altar in his custom tuxedo, every inch the aristocratic groom. Emma looked like a princess in her gown, though I noticed she wouldn't meet my eyes. The minister began the ceremony with the traditional words, "We are gathered here today." My heart hammered in my chest. I had the documents in my purse, I had the truth, but I also had my daughter's happiness, or what she believed was her happiness, balanced in my hands. The minister continued, "If anyone has reason why these two should not be wed, speak now or forever hold your peace." The silence stretched. This was the moment. This was my last chance. I stood up. The entire congregation turned to stare. Emma's face went white. Christopher's smile faltered for just a fraction of a second. "I have something to say," I announced, my voice carrying through the stunned silence. And then I told them everything. I told them about Christopher Morris from Ohio, about the fraud conviction, about the real Christopher Wellington III, deceased, whose identity had been stolen. I pulled out the documents and held them up: arrest records, prison documentation, evidence of the identity theft. "This man," I said, pointing at the groom, "is not who he says he is. He is a criminal who has deceived all of you, and I will not stand by and watch him deceive my daughter any longer." The aftermath was chaos. Christopher tried to run, but the police I'd contacted were waiting outside. The investigation I'd initiated had concluded just that morning, and they'd been preparing to arrest him. My speaking out at the wedding simply accelerated the timeline. The Wellington parents collapsed in their seats, the truth of their real son's death hitting them alongside the betrayal. Guests pulled out phones, already spreading the scandal. The wedding, that perfect display of high society elegance, dissolved into mayhem. Emma stood frozen at the altar, her bouquet fallen at her feet. Later, much later, after the police had taken Christopher away, after the guests had dispersed in horrified whispers, after the Wellingtons had retreated to process their grief and rage, I found Emma sitting alone in the now empty ballroom. I sat down beside her. She didn't look at me, but she didn't move away either. "You were right," she finally whispered, "about everything." "I'm sorry," I said. "I'm sorry I had to do it that way. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from this pain." She turned to me then, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, Mom. The things I said to you, the things I believed, he made me ashamed of you, of where we came from, of who we really are." I pulled her into my arms, and she cried like she hadn't cried since she was a little girl. "You are not low class," she sobbed. "You're the strongest, most dignified person I know, and I forgot that. I forgot everything you taught me about real value, real worth. I'm so sorry." "I know, baby," I whispered, stroking her hair. "I know." The scandal made national news. The Wellington family eventually thanked me once they'd processed everything. They paid for the real Christopher's proper memorial service. They even offered to compensate Emma for the emotional damage, but she declined. 6 months later, Emma moved back into my apartment above the laundromat. She'd quit her job at the Wellington family's firm and enrolled in graduate school for social work. She wanted to help people, she said, real people with real problems. We spent our evenings together again, talking over cheap wine and homemade pasta, and slowly I watched my daughter find herself again. She was still healing, still processing the betrayal and her own complicity in denying who she was. But she was no longer pretending to be someone she wasn't. "Mom," she asked one evening, "do you think I'll ever stop feeling stupid for falling for him?" "You're not stupid," I said firmly. "You fell in love with a lie. That doesn't make you stupid, it makes you human." She smiled, that real smile I hadn't seen in over a year. "How did you stay so strong when he called you low class when I turned my back on you? How did you not break?" I thought about it for a moment. Because I know who I am. I'm a nurse who saves lives. I'm a mother who raised a beautiful, intelligent daughter on my own. I'm a woman who pays her bills and treats people with respect. That's not low class, that's dignity. And no one, not Christopher Wellington or Morris or whatever his real name is, not anyone can take that away from me. Emma reached across the table and took my hand. "I love you, Mom, and I'm proud to be your daughter. I'm proud of where we come from." "I love you too, sweetheart," I said. "Always have, always will." The champagne at that engagement party might have been expensive and the chandeliers might have been crystal, but sitting in my small kitchen with my daughter, drinking wine from mismatched glasses, I felt richer than any Wellington ever had. Because I had something real, something true, something that no amount of money or social status could buy. I had love and dignity and truth. And that, as it turned out, was worth everything.